If you've ever opened your investing app, searched for ETFs, and felt overwhelmed by all the options, then this episode is for you. Welcome to Get Started Investing, a show that helps you make the most of your money. My name is Ren, and today I am joined by Simon. Simon, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Show first, I believe.
You've never been on Get Started Investing before?
Have you ever presented it without Bryce?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right, do that again then.
Nah, keep it in. So yeah, for people who are new to the show, Bryce is normally the one that introduces the show and is normally the one sitting in Simon's seat. But he's taking a couple of well-deserved weeks off. But Simon very ably has stepped into the breach and has agreed to keep the train on his tracks. How many metaphors can I use as I explain it here? But you're going to be joining us for the next couple of weeks.
Yes, really looking forward to it. Let's get started.
Let's do it. So we are talking about how you can compare any ETF in 10 minutes. Because ETFs have been an amazing innovation. They've made investing cheaper. They've made it more accessible. They've made it simpler. They give us access to foreign countries, foreign currencies, different asset classes, gold, Bitcoin, whatever you want to invest in, there's probably an ETF that lets you do it. And also some of the best fund managers in the world. But all that opportunity comes with a cost.
They are pretty amazing, but there is a cost, and really it comes down to analysis paralysis. There's hundreds of ETFs on the ASX. Amazingly, this year in the US, the number of ETFs surpassed the number of stocks you can buy for the first time. And with such overwhelming choice, how do you actually choose?
Yeah, now this topic was sparked by a question from Amy.
Hi, Equity Mates. I'm a big fan of your podcast and I have a question about shares. I'm 24 years old and in about July this year I bought a bunch of VHY shares because my dad told me to, and that was before I did any research of my own. Now I'm wondering if I should sell those and buy VAS shares instead. Thank you.
Well, first of all, Amy, a massive thank you for the question. If you have a question, you can go to the link in the show notes or the YouTube description and record your voice note. And Amy, also well done. 24 years old, starting to invest. Shout out to your dad for encouraging you. The only superpower in investing is time, and you're taking advantage of it. So well done. But Simon, I think Amy's question leads to what we were talking about. There are so many options out there, so many good choices out there. VHY and VAS, both great ETFs, but how do we choose?
The $1 million question. So we have put together a framework you'll be able to use to analyze any ETF and compare them against each other in 10 minutes.
Now, if you want to read along, we have an ETF handbook that you can download. This is just one of the many useful bits of information included in the ETF handbook. So you can download that. We'll also include the link in the description in the show notes. But Simon, we've got 5 steps. Now, Amy asked the question about VHY, the Vanguard Australian Shares High Yield ETF. So let's use VHY to go through the 5 steps. And then we'll compare it to VAS, which she asked us about. So step 1, look at the name.
Look at the name. You can learn a lot from the name. ETFs are actually named pretty well, the conventions. So using VHY as an example, Vanguard Australian Shares High Yield ETF. The product issue is in there, Vanguard. The shares it covers is in there, Australian shares. What it's trying to achieve is in there, high yield. And then the ticker is in there as well. So each ETF will have a ticker on the stock exchange, VHY.
If you can dig past the jargon and understand it, the name is always quite revealing. In this case, Australian shares, it invests in Australia, but then high yield, it wants to pay a higher dividend or a higher yield than your normal Australian shares ETF. So that's always the starting point. Look at the name, understand what it's telling us. Step 2 is then understand its purpose. What is it trying to achieve? And the place to do that is the ETF issuer's website.
Go to the website. Every ETF issuer has a product page and you can find that purpose. So in Vanguard's words for VHY, it provides low-cost exposure to companies listed on the Australian Securities Exchange, the ASX, that have higher forecast dividends relative to other ASX-listed companies.
Okay, so we're starting to understand a little bit more about that ETF, and you can start to think about how that purpose relates to the goals, your investment goals. In this case, obviously, higher forecast dividends. So if your goal is to get regular income that, that you can see an alignment there. But we'll get to that later, because the next step 3, is we know what its purpose is. Now, how does it try and achieve that purpose?
Yeah, how does the ETF work? Is it active or is it passive? So someone managing the stocks which go in there, or is it just tracking an index or a benchmark? So VHY, this is tracking an index, the FTSE Australian High Dividend Yield Index. They are screening for high dividend payers, and importantly, they're looking at the sustainability of that dividend. So they're not just putting in stocks which may have paid a good dividend this year or recently. They're looking at, can this dividend continue for years to come?
You can also here look at the top holdings, because that is also how the ETF tries to achieve the purpose. And the top holdings here are some classic Australian names. So this is in order at time of recording: BHP, Commonwealth Bank, NAB, Westpac, Telstra, ANZ, Rio Tinto, Woodside, Transurban, Macquarie. So just to summarise that list, we've got Australia's big 4 banks, we've got their 2 major miners, and another resource giant in Woodside, the major telco in Telstra, toll road operator in Transurban, and then Macquarie, which really is one of the big 5 banks. Yeah. So that's what's in the ETF, how it tries to achieve that purpose that we outlined before. Step 4 is, what does it cost? What are the fees?
Well, the fees. So very easy to find again. And for VHY, this is 0.25% per annum. So the way you could think about that is, for every $10,000 invested, you would pay $25 a year fee for owning that ETF. Now, 0.25%, it might not sound like much, but recently we did do an episode to unpack the difference between a 0.5% and a 0.05% fee, and it really does add up over time.
Yeah. I mean, 0.25 is small, but if you think about your cheapest opportunity to get access to those similar Australian names, the cheapest Australian shares at the moment is the BetaShares A200 ETF, which is 0.04% management fee. So it's $4 per 10,000 invested per year, rather than $25 per 10,000 invested per year. So it's not it doesn't feel like a huge difference, but that difference compounds over time. And you've got to think, am I willing to pay 5 times the fees for this high yield tilt? So I guess the point is, fees are important. Don't overpay if you can get the same thing cheaper. Which leads us to step 5, which I guess is the most important question here. What are the after fee returns?
Yes, this is what we all want at the end of the day.
This is why we do it.
This is why we do it, to get the returns. So looking at VHY, as you'd expect, is pretty good, 4.4% annually, and they pay out dividends every quarter. The total return, if we look at the capital growth and the dividend, the last 10 years has been 9.71% per annum. Pretty good, really good, actually. The past year, it's been just under 17%.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
What happened in the last year here?
Well, let's get to that when we compare it to VAS, as Amy asked, because we can unpack some of the differences. I think we should acknowledge as well that there's a franking credit that goes on top of the dividend that adds a bit of returns in your tax return. But yeah, so I think that's how we analyze any one ETF. The question though is, how do you compare ETFs? So let's take a quick break here and get to that after the break. Welcome back to Get Started Investing. Today we are talking about how you can compare any 2 ETFs. Now, this is where the rubber hits the road. We've spoken about our 5 steps to analyze any one ETF. The question is now, how do we use that framework to put 2 ETFs head to head? So for this, we need to start with our goal. What do we want to achieve with the investments? What's our time horizon? Think about things like how much risk are we willing to take? But let's just choose a super generic general goal here, which is we want an ETF that will grow faster than inflation and give us the overall returns of the market over the long term. Pretty vanilla.
Pretty vanilla. I mean, VHY sounds like quite a good fit here, but let's go back to Amy's question and compare this to Vanguard Australian Shares ETF. So yeah, I guess step 1, let's look at the name.
Yeah, so we've done VHY. The other name, VAS, that she asked, the full name is Vanguard Australian Shares Index ETF. So again, Vanguard is the issuer. Australian Shares is what they're investing in. And then index ETF means it's just tracking the overall index.
Yes.
It's not trying to tilt it into high yield. It's not trying to do anything. It's just the vanilla overall index.
Okay. So then step 2, we want to know the purpose. We're going to go to the website, find out about the ETF.
And Vanguard lists the purpose as to track the returns of the S&P ASX 300 index before taking into account fees, expenses, and tax.
So at this stage, I think it's quite clear what the difference is. One is tracking the index, the top companies in Australia. The other is tilting to try and get Australian companies, but who pay regular high dividends. So let's go to step 3. How are they actually going to achieve that purpose?
Yeah. So we spoke about the index that VHY is tracking and the top holdings. So we can compare that to VAS. So it's tracking the ASX 300 index. And if we look at the top 10, I'll just list them and then we can analyze it. Commonwealth Bank, BHP, NAB, Westpac, Wesfarmers, ANZ, CSL, Macquarie, Goodman, and Telstra. Now, for people who have been really closely listening, they may have been able to pick up the differences between that and the top 10 we listed earlier, but let's unpack the differences. So VHY and VAS had 3 differences in the top 10. VAS had Wesfarmers, which is the big retail conglomerate that owns Kmart, Officeworks and the like, had CSL, the biotech company, and Goodman Group, the property developer. VHY didn't have them in their top 10 and instead had Rio Tinto, Woodside, and Transurban.
That makes sense.
And so if you think about the differences there, Australia's big miners and resource companies generally pay higher dividends. So that's Rio Tinto and Woodside. And then Transurban is known as the classic dividend play because it owns a lot of infrastructure, a lot of toll roads, and it can just get a regular income and pay it out.
Yeah, so they've basically switched out some of the potentially higher growth companies which don't pay dividends or pay very low dividends, and in VHY you've got those dividend regular revenue generators which pay out to their shareholders.
Yeah.
Okay, so step 4. What are the fees difference between these?
So VHY we said was 0.25%, VAS is 0.07%.
Wow.
So a meaningful difference which will compound over time, but not...
Both are cheap.
Both are cheap, yeah.
Yeah, I think anything under 0.5% you generally regard as quite cheap.
Yeah. Depending.
But there's a notable difference. 0.18% can really add up over time, illustrated by the example you shared earlier. So I guess most importantly, though, step 5, what are the after fee returns?
Yeah, so the dividend yield is slightly different, as you would expect. VHY is 4.4%, VAS 3.2%. So both decent dividends, but a difference. They both pay their dividends quarterly, and we should also acknowledge that VHY will have slightly higher franking credits as well.
Yes.
But what about total return? Over the past 1 year, there's a notable difference. So VHY returned 17%, whereas VAS returned 12.5%.
Wow, Amy's dad's got to be happy with that return.
17%, yeah. Well, Amy's got to be happy with it as well.
True.
So a key difference is some of these stocks that VHY don't have in their top 10 have done quite poorly. So CSL is down about 40% this year.
Wow, 40%?
Yeah, it's been smashed. And then Goodman Group is down 17% over the past 12 months.
Okay, so they've dragged that down.
Yeah, so that's a key reason why the difference in 1 year performance. But remember, we're long-term investors here, let's look at 10-year performance. How have the two ETFs gone over the past 10 years? Well, VHY has delivered 9.7% per annum, and VAS has delivered 9.6% per annum.
Same. Pretty much the same.
Basically the same. So I guess, how do we wrap up this comparison? Well, they're basically going to deliver the same returns over the long term because they basically own the same underlying stocks. So that's to be expected. VHY, you should expect a slightly higher dividend yield and a slightly higher franking credit as well. So if income and franking credits is your purpose, then VHY makes a lot of sense. VAS, you would expect more of that return to come from capital growth and slightly less of that return to come from dividend yield. So if you're thinking about long-term compounding returns, capital growth is more tax effective than income. And so that might be the one for you. But these two ETFs that we're comparing are much of a muchness. So to wrap it up and to answer Amy's question and to answer the purpose of this episode, we think those 5 steps are a good 5 steps to compare any ETFs. Think about your goal and then think about the goal of the ETF, how they align, and then how the ETF achieves that goal.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part. Keep in mind, whatever you're investing in needs to be aligned with what you're trying to achieve. And then this 5 steps should help you work out what's the best ETF to achieve that.
Yeah. And so, Amy, we can't tell you what ETF is right for you, but I think if you think about what you're trying to achieve and which ETF best aligns with that, you can make that decision yourself. But be confident that whichever you choose, VHY or VAS, are going to look very similar because the underlying holdings are very similar.
Yes. So thanks, Dane, for the question. We love getting your question, and particularly we love getting your question as a voicemail. So please let us know what other ETF questions you want us to tackle next, and we'll make sure we get them on the schedule.
Simon, it's been great. Well, you'll be back next week.
Great. See you then.